Hi again, everyone. You're welcome again to this session of Zero Carbon Africa Impact Program. We started on Monday with the course from climate science to action. We have Mayokun Iyamolere as our facilitator. We started on a high note on Monday, where we learned how climate change occurs, global warming, and all of those concepts. So let me see. I think our facilitator is on the call. So let me just say hi. Yeah, good morning, Mayokun. You're welcome. Thank you for doing this for us. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mayo. I can hear you clearly. It's a pleasure to be here again this morning.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for doing this. We are going to more like continue from where we stopped. So a quick one. And this is just going to be for this week. I know a lot of us have been asking about the cohorts and how it works. So we divided all of the participants into two groups. Cohort 1 will have their lectures on Monday, while cohort 2 should have their lecture on Thursdays. But because this week marks the beginning of this program, we've allowed everyone to join on both days, irrespective of your cohorts. But from next week, it will be awesome if we can just, attend classes based on our cohorts, and this is also important because each day we will be taking attendance. Like today, you should watch out for the link for attendance, so that before the end of the class you marked yourself present for the class. Without further ado, let's start today's session. I think, but before we start, I think someone wants to talk. So let me just give them the opportunity. Frank Jimo and Edwin Mombula. So I'll just allow you to talk. Please, you have 30 seconds, so that we just get on into this class. Farouk Jimo. You've been unmuted, so please just go on. Yes. Okay. If Farouk is not ready, Edwin Mombila, you can go ahead, unmute your mic.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. It's nice to hear your voice. Aside mine.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for this great program. Yeah. My name is Edwin from Zambia. Earlier on, I just wanted to indicate that we were unable to hear you as your mic was on mute.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being on this call. All right. Uzwamaka Mary, you want to speak? Just 30 seconds. You have a question? Okay. So I think, so in the absence of any other question, let's start today's in class. So a lot of us already know Mayokun. Mayokun is the founder of Plugin Nigeria. So in order to save our time, Mayokun, are you ready?
Yeah, I am here.
Okay, so let me just
unable to start my video.
Oh, really? Okay, I'll just make you a co-host now.
All right. So Mayo, while you're working on that, most of the persons we have on this call, are they same persons we had before, or there's more of new persons?
So for this week, I expect that most of the people that are going to be on the call now will either would have attended the first class, and maybe we might have some new sets of individual on this call just attending for the first time. So let me do a poll really. If this is your first time on the call, that is on Zero Carbon Africa, please just indicate by show of hands. You can use the raise hand feature. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Mike, are you able to share your video now?
No, not yet. I cannot start my video because the host has stopped it. So
okay, so just a second, please. Okay, so you should be able to do that now. Okay.
yeah, oh sorry, so dark here.
So let's just.
Can you hear me, Mayowa?
Yes, I can. I can.
Okay, great.
Very clearly.
Let me know when I'm good to go so that
Okay.
and if you could also activate the chat room for participants, I think that would be great.
Yeah, okay, so quick one, the chat room is activated already. If we have specific questions, we can just drop on the Q&A. Okay, it's still deactivated. Okay. Okay, so let me see. Okay. Yeah, so I think you can just go on.
Okay, great.
Yes, so while we figure out how we get on with that, so that we just use a good amount of time to go over the course today.
Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. Good morning from Nigeria. It's a pleasure to be here once again with everybody. Thank you again, Mayowa. Thank you for following up well and for allowing us to do this at an earlier time than initially planned. I can see we have 156 attendees on the call. Yeah, 157 now. Thank you guys so much for making yourself available to be part of this opportunity, for registering for this fellowship. And I'm looking forward to all the beautiful actions you're going to take after you complete this fellowship. And to the HISI Health team, thank you once again for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure. So I have just about 1 hour for all my session this morning, so I'm just going to run into it. If you were part of the previous session, I think this will just be a refresher session for you. And if this is new, also interesting. So if you were part of the previous session, let's just play around a bit. What one thing do you remember from the session? What spoke to you the most from all that we communicated or conversed about? For those that were part of the first session we had, do you remember anything that really stuck in this session? Let me see if I don't think the chat room is active yet.
Yeah, it should now.
Okay, great. So anyone from the first session? And if you're not able to use the chat room, we can do the Q&A room. Okay, yeah, I see somebody wrote, we are the cause of global warming and we are the solution as well. Interesting.
Okay. Perhaps if you want to speak, so you can raise your hands. I think we can allow someone to speak if it's pertaining to the question. To just say a few things you gain from the first class.
Okay, maybe we can take 1 or 2 persons to speak if they want to. Okay, how significant are you? From the first session, I was able to have a vivid understanding of greenhouse gas and the greenhouse effects. I think you also mean.
Okay, so someone wants to speak.
Yes.
Stephen Berry. So you can just unmute your mic and let's get your feedback.
Thank you very much. Good morning, moderator.
Good morning.
This is Stephen Mera from Zambia. I think last time our WENBA was very exciting. I learned to say we are the cause of global warming and we are also part of the solutions. And most of the issue that has to relate with climate change, human activities are the #1 cause of climate change. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to learn more even today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that feedback. Thank you so much, Stephen. So I think we are good. This is a good time to start. This is a good time to start.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Stephen, for that feedback. So let's just get into it. Before I'm going to do a presentation first, then I'm going to play a video for everybody to watch, then I'm going to conclude with another presentation, and we are just going to be running swiftly through it. And my first presentation is one that I hope would help you as help us, all of us on the call as humans, put things in a better perspective. So again, like I said, if you have done this before, it's a refresher course, and if this is your first time, I'm very sure that you're going to enjoy this. So let's see. Let me share my screen. Here we go. Okay, please confirm you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. So the first thing I want to do is to take you on a journey around the universe, and this is going to be an interesting journey, and try not to get lost in space. So let's go. So because we are going to go into a very huge amount of space, please hold on tightly to your self-esteem. You don't want to lose it in space. And I have a question for you. What is your place in the universe? How important and significant do you think you are in the grand scheme of things in the universe? I'd really like to see responses to these. I want to see responses like, I am significant, I don't think I am significant, I'm very significant, I'm the most significant, and all of those. What are the reaction buttons that we have? So if you think you are significant, give me a thumbs up. Let's see. I can see a lot of thumbs up. What reaction emoji can we use for the otherwise response? If you think you're not significant, can you give me a different emoji other than thumbs up? If you think you are not so significant.
Significant. I'm very significant from Winnie.
Okay, I see the chat room is active now. Great, great. Okay, let's see if you're really significant. Let's just go on. So this is the solar system wherein we exist, and we have now 8 planets in the solar system: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. This is just a small quiz. Can you mention these planets in order of their distance from the sun? But let's move on from that. Now, this, the planets are not of equal sizes. Now, these are some of the planets in our solar system that our planet Earth is bigger than. So the Earth is bigger than Venus, Mars, Mercury, and Pluto. I think there's been a lot of effort recently to go to Mars and to, try to see if life can exist on Mars. I think there's even plans for some people to go and visit there very soon. But this just puts things in perspective. See, our planet is bigger than these 4 planets, or 3, if we remove Pluto. And here also, our planet is small beside some other ones. So you see our planet Earth somewhere here, and you see the planets that are way bigger than it. Now, when you may have learned these things in schools, and they have listed for you that planets are bigger, these planets are bigger than these ones, and all of those, but seeing them in pictures really helps you to put things in perspective. And this is very important in climate change education, or in climate education, because when you are teaching people, it's good if you can help them visualize what you're teaching them about. So that's one thing. So moving on, now this, remember, it's a solar system, and this is the size of the sun. So when you look up in the sky on a sunny afternoon, and you are not able to really look for long, and you see that shiny thing that we know powers the whole solar system and our planet. So this is how big the sun is, and you can see the size of all the planets as compared to the size of the sun. So I'll ask a question here. See our planet Earth being pointed to with an arrow. See how small and tiny it is as compared to the sun on this scale. So now a question: how many Earths do you think we can extract from the sun? This size of the Earth, how many of it do you think we can, get out of this sun if you had to put it in numbers? How many millions or billions of Earth do you think? Let me see responses in the chat room. 1 million. I think 1 million will be so small, because this is 380 million, 100 million, 10 million. Awesome. I just saw somebody, I may not be significant when it comes to physical compared to the gigantic Sirius Jupiter, but my actions have a great effect in the universe, and it can make or mar the universe. Interesting. Okay, great. So we have the perspective of how, very small the Earth is as compared to the sun. Now let's move on. Here, this is still our planet. So if we go 30,000 feet up into the sky, this is how difficult it would be to locate you, because you're just now like a tiny speck, on the whole planet. Like we can't even pick you out at this height, at this elevation. And if we go further up, another 70,000 feet to make 100,000. This is now in the Earth, or just outside the Earth's atmosphere. We cannot really pinpoint you here. And now remember that the sun earlier was very big, because it powers our solar system. The sun is a star, and there are also other stars in other systems around the universe. So now this our sun that was looking very big in some images back, see it as compared to some other stars. And here you see that Jupiter, that is the biggest planet in our solar system, is just about 1 pixel as in this scale, and our Earth is no longer visible at this scale. So now we have moved beyond our solar system, we are going further into the universe. And if the Earth is no longer visible at this scale, I don't know how visible you can be as a human, and how significant you may feel at this scale. So the sun is very small here as compared to other suns. The biggest star here is the Arcturus. And in this image, even Arcturus is still not the biggest star, because there are other bigger ones. So now on this scale, you see that Jupiter is no longer visible at this scale. Definitely the Earth is no longer visible, and definitely you are lost. Yeah, non-existent at this scale. Now the sun, our very big sun, is just 1 pixel here. And you can see other stars that are way bigger than Arcturus from the previous image. So sometimes I just think that, what if one of these suns miss their way, like this very big antares, if they miss their way and come to our planet one day, would the power from them, would our Earth be able to withstand them? What do you think? But I just have wild thoughts. So moving on from this, so out of billions of galaxies, and you're just one person on one planet out of 8 planets in this star system, and there are 100 billion star systems. That's what we call the solar systems. Then that makes the galaxy, and out of 100 billion galaxies, and this says you are enormously insignificant because you're just nowhere to be found in all of this vastness. This is massive, and and you don't really exist at this scale. Somebody says God will intervene if that happens. Okay. Well, I guess God has set it such that would not happen, or that cannot happen. Okay, so on this scale, we are enormously insignificant as humans. But then moving on, yeah, on this planet for a purpose. Amidst this vastness, we can't seem to wrap our minds around. You were made a steward, they're not a destroyer. And as humans, we have the combined purpose of nurturing our planet we are on. For if we don't, and we continue to hurt it, we are further. We are just simply rendering ourselves less significant in space and time around the universe. I'm having to rush through all of this because of time. So beyond all of those vastness, there are some things that make you unique as a human, and keep your esteem and significance intact, because in all this vastness, you are unique in your own ways. You are much more enormously significant when you care for this planet you've been placed on. And the reason why we had to do all of this is we are going to link all of this to the climate crisis. So we are experiencing the climate crisis because we are not caring for the planet that we have been placed on. And that is further rendering us less significant in all of this vastness. So having all of these things in perspective would help us see the need to just ensure that we take care of our planet, and so that we don't just get wiped out of space and time. So out of 100 billion galaxies, 100 billion star system, out of 8 billion people, you have your own unique genetic makeup. Nobody's like you in all the planets, in all the universe. Your thumbprint is unique to you. You can create art, you can write a song, you can love and others can love you, you can live, you can laugh, you can feel emotions. So those are things that really make you unique and makes you significant, really. So you and all of us are enormously significant. But our significance is only as important to the level that we take care of the planet. So here is an image and a diagram that helps us to further put things in perspective. So this is how we have been interacting with the environment, and this is part of what causes this whole climate crisis that we are in. We feel like we are the smartest, we have the brains, we are the best thinking mammals and all that we are lords over the environment, and we just have this kind of majestic relationship over all the other components of the environment, while we are in actual sense supposed to understand that we are just a part of the whole ecosystem, and that we cannot survive without all the other components of the ecosystem. So like I have here, man, let go of your ego and grow with the eco. Somebody says they cannot hear me. Could others please confirm? Can you hear me, please?
We can hear you, sir.
Okay, great. So let's go off your ego and go with the eco. So if we have this mindset, we are going to be more careful in our interactions with the planet, and we would not be experiencing the kind of crisis we are experiencing now. But we are already there. We are already experiencing this crisis. So what can we do? How can we salvage the situation? And that's part of why this fellowship is important, to help to raise young Africans and to imbue them with skills that would empower them to be climate action leaders in Africa and all over the world. So that's the first part of the presentation. The next thing now, I'm going to play a video that would really do justice to help you to understand the climate crisis better, and how we contribute as humans, how our activities actually is the cause of climate change, and the actions that it would also help you to understand some of the things we need to do to start combating this climate crisis, and to help to right the wrongs that we have already done to the planet. Sometimes when we are having this conversation, we are talking about how we are harming the planet, but ultimately, when we say the planet, it mostly comes back to us, because when we are hurting the planet expresses that hurt with extended impacts that affect us. So there's a saying that I can't remember the owner of the saying now, that man is in a war with nature, and if man wins, man has lost. So let me say that again. Man is in a war with nature. If man wins, man has lost. So the way we are interacting with nature, we are fighting with nature. And if we win that war, we say we have dominated nature, then we have lost the war, because it comes back to hurt us. Okay, so let's go on to playing the video. I'll just stop my video now so you can focus on that. Please pay attention very closely and enjoy this video. Oh, I'm having this challenge again. Please hold on.
Also share the video from here.
Oh, you have the video at your end. Yeah, you can share. I'm having difficulty.
That video, yeah. Okay. So let's see if you can play. If you can't play it, then I'll just run through it from here. Okay. So it's
Is there sound?
no, not yet.
Okay.
I'm not sure it's playing yet. Yeah, but I can see it on the screen. I can see it on the screen, but it's not playing yet. Okay, it's playing now. Well, there's no sound yet.
No sound. Okay, let me stop and try again. That was what worked earlier. Let's see this. You can try playing from your end, Mayowa, just to save time, because yeah, I can't click the share sound option here. Same thing that happened last time. So
let me see.
Are you able to, Maiwa?
Please just give me a second. Let me do this.
All right.
Okay. Okay. So I don't know if it's still audible. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's playing, but there's no sound. Similar thing.
No, I think you should increase your volume from YouTube.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, your volume is probably low. I don't think it's a volume issue, Sha.
Yeah, please tell me if it's still.
It's playing,
Can
but
you hear
there's
the
still no
sound?
sound. No
Okay,
sound.
there's still no sound. Okay. Just this. Let me do this.
So it's at the point of sharing, you'd have to select the share sound option.
Okay, so
I don't know why that's.
let's do this.
Hi, can anyone hear me?
Yeah, Bam Bam, we can
Yeah,
hear
we
you.
can hear you.
I think we lost the speaker here.
No, it's still here. If you're able to play, that's what I'm saying. Yes. Okay. Should also play now. Okay. Let's see. Oh, share sound.
Change, also referred to as. This is Earth, the planet in our solar system that we live on. However, our planet is not on a good path for continuing to sustain life. The Earth is facing the accelerating detrimental effect of climate change, also referred to as global warming. This is Earth, the planet in our solar system that we live on. However, our planet is not on a good path for continuing to sustain life. The Earth is facing the accelerating detrimental effect of climate change, also referred to as global warming. Well, what exactly is climate change? Climate change is defined as a long-term change in the Earth's overall temperature with massive and permanent ramifications. Climate scientists believe that this isn't caused naturally by the Earth, but by human activity. Earth's atmosphere consists of gases such as oxygen and nitrogen, and other gases known as greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, and methane. Incoming light from the sun hits the Earth's surface. The Earth absorbs some of that energy, heating the surface of the planet. The rest of that energy gets reflected. Some of that energy goes back out into space, but greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide trap the energy and send it right back to the Earth's surface, heating it up even more. This is known as the greenhouse effect. Now, a little greenhouse effect is natural to the Earth and is a good thing to have, but a large greenhouse effect can be catastrophic, causing a lot of that energy to stay in our atmosphere and heat up the Earth at an accelerating rate. Some of the main human activity that emits greenhouse gases are fossil fuel burning, animals, agriculture, and deforestation, and waste and recycle pollution. Burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas, as well as gasoline, are some of the largest pollutants of carbon emissions. Not only that, but when fossil fuels are burnt and their gases mix with heat, they create smog, a thick air pollutant that is highly toxic. For example, Beijing smog is so thick and heavy that you can't go outside without some form of surgical mask or breathing filter. The massive amounts of excrement produced by livestock farms emit toxic gases such as hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, and methane into the air. Methane is 23 times more effective at trapping heat than CO2, and roughly 80% of these emissions in the US come from animal waste. Over 56 billion animals are globally raised every year for food purposes. That's 8 times more than the human population, and 8 times as much waste adding emissions to our atmosphere. Land used for growing animal feed and raising animals for food used a staggering 30% of the Earth's landmass in 2006, and the food production industry has only increased since. 7 football fields worth of land is bulldozed every minute to create more room for farmed animals and the crops that feed them. Bulldozing land and deforestation not only emits greenhouse gases, but it gets rid of plants, trees, and forests, the things on our planet that actually absorb carbon dioxide. The more we deforest our Earth, the less carbon dioxide it can absorb from our atmosphere. Solid waste landfills are some of the largest pollutants of methane gas in the United States. The average person produces 4.3 pounds of trash per day. That's 1,569 pounds of trash per year for one person. With the 7+ billion people that live on the globe, that's 11.6 trillion pounds of trash dumped into landfills every year. But how do we know that our human activity is the cause of accelerated climate change and not the Earth's natural process? Our civilizations produced a devastating 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide last year, which equals 700 trillion cubic feet of CO2. That's a little more than 100 Mount Everests of CO2. It's enough CO2 to fill the entire Grand Canyon 5 times, or it's the equivalent of 19 million Empire State Buildings. The largest natural pollutant of the Earth are volcanoes. If we take the largest scientific estimate of carbon emissions produced by volcanoes every year, that's 500 million tons of volcanic CO2. But that's not even 2% of the nearly 40 billion tons of CO2 that our civilizations produced. Over the course of thousands of years, our climate goes through a natural climate cycle of carbon dioxide being absorbed and released into the atmosphere. But once the Industrial Revolution kicked in, burning fossil fuels became the necessity of manufacture and production plants, and the CO2 level shot up violently and have not slowed down since. The Earth has not seen this much carbon dioxide in its atmosphere for millions of years. Our planet with the greenhouse effect is like a bathtub being filled with more water than it can drain. Eventually, it will fill up with more than it can handle. But why should we care about global warming and climate increasing? The Earth's temperature has risen 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit over the past century and is projected to rise another 0.5 to 8.6 degrees Fahrenheit over the next 100 years. Animals and plant life are struggling to adapt to these conditions for survival. If even one species goes extinct, it can create a domino effect with the food chain. No living plants or animals means no living humans. Rising temperatures makes the Earth's oceans become warmer, which causes something known as ocean acidification, which rises the acid levels in the oceans from the carbon dioxide reacting with the salt water. Ocean acidification harms animal life and is what's causing the death of the Great Barrier Reef. This is a problem because about 1 billion people use ocean life as their main source of protein. Since the oceans are becoming warmer, the polar ice caps are melting, which has caused almost 65% of the polar ice caps to melt since 1979. The Earth loses on average 400 billion tons of ice each year. That's like a giant block of ice 4 miles long on each side, 64 cubic miles, that melts and is added to the ocean. The oceans fill with too much water, and the shores, like in Louisiana, can't hold all that water, and coastal regions get flooded and destroyed. Climate change also causes more frequent and intense natural disasters such as hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, heat waves, and droughts. So the question is, how do we stop this? Instead of burning fossil fuels, we need to convert to renewable energy such as solar and wind power, which emit zero carbon emissions when operating. Energy from the sun and the wind are infinite, unlike fossil fuels, we will never run out of them. More solar energy falls on the Earth in 1 hour than all the energy that our civilizations consume in 1 year. Civil engineers from the Solutions Project calculated that we could power most of the world with only renewable energy if we just actually decided to do it. If we cut back on deforestation, not only does that reduce the amount of fossil fuels burned, but there will be more plants and forests actively absorbing carbon dioxide. If we use more reusable and renewable resources, this will reduce the amount of energy needed to create new products. This will also reduce the massive amount of landfill dumping that we do. That all sounds like great, efficient, and healthy ideas, but how can I help personally right now? You can drive an electric or fuel-efficient car. Replacing your regular car with a Toyota Prius, the average person can prevent the emission of about 1 ton of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Now, we all can't afford to just buy new and different cars. So to help, you can walk or bike places, take public transportation, or if anything, ease off the accelerator and make your car as efficient as possible. Use energy-efficient light bulbs. LED light bulbs use only a fraction of the power of incandescent light bulbs. Air dry your clothes instead of using power-guzzling machines like dryers. Turn off electronics or lights when you're not using them. Eat less meat or no meat at all. By replacing an omnivorous diet with a vegan diet, the average person can prevent the emission of about 1.5 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. Reduce, reuse, recycle. And of course, spread your knowledge and concerns of climate change. Remember, climate change is very real and is drastically affecting planet Earth, our home. And although we are the problem, we can also be the solution.
Okay, thank you very much, Maiwa, for helping to play that video, very important video. So for everybody, how did that video speak to you? Did you see some bit of yourself in that video? Did you see something that you do that you now have a better idea of how it contributes to climate change? Yeah, let me see your responses. Is there something that you saw in the video that you do? You can mention that you now know that on a larger scale contributes to the climate crisis. Anybody? Let me see. Single-use plastic, interesting. Driving cars, consuming lots of meat. Okay. Interesting. So I'm happy that the video spoke to us and that it helped us to understand things better. Oh, I have a background now. Interesting. Okay. So now I'm just going to go into the final part of this session. It's a presentation I am going to run through, and with all the background that we have created, the initial presentation, the video that we have seen, then we have seen there's a huge need to actually take climate action. And this climate action is not left for some set of persons. It's an action, it's something that all of us as individuals should take, and it's something that all of us on this fellowship should take very importantly. And again, this is a very wonderful opportunity that this fellowship is giving you for free to become a global citizen that is taking action for the benefit of our planet. Climate change is a very topical global issue, and through this fellowship, you are getting an opportunity to learn so much about it, and beyond all the learning, to go and take action, which is very important. So the knowledge you are going to come through this fellowship, there are things that people actually pay for, that people actually go to take some courses and pay for before they get them, or before they are able to use them, but you are getting them for free. Or Mayowa, did anybody pay for this fellowship? Yeah, so kudos to the organizers. Like, this is really a big deal, and I don't want you guys to just say it, oh, I attended a training and I'm going to get a certificate at the end, I'm going to add it to my CV, and that's all. this is not that kind of training. This is one where after you have completed the fellowship, you should take action, and you should be inspired by the fact that there are 1,000 or over 1,000 other young people from Africa who would also be leading actions through this program. And with all the plans that the fellowship has for you, you'd have opportunity to work with these other young people. So the next presentation is just going to be shining lights on a bit of how the things you need to put into consideration as you are going to go out there to take climate action, or to lead climate action in any way you want to do. So we are just going to run through this quickly. Please confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, your screen is visible.
Okay, thank you, Mayowa. So from climate science to action, you have seen the video and you saw some numbers. You saw how the whole how global warming, the process that starts global warming, and how global warming leads to climate change. So there's a whole lot of numbers and science behind that. So after all of those knowledge that we have garnered now, so how can we take action? How can we take climate action? So this is what we are going to be briefly running through, some concepts that you should understand, and some things that you need to know as you are going to be leading climate action. So here we have some definition of terms. Climate science, I don't need to read all of this. Well, climate science is critical for understanding the drivers and impacts of climate change and informing effective responses. So an understanding, before you are going to take action or lead action for climate, you should be able to understand the basis of climate change and what causes climate change, and have all of those information, because it will be very important in your action, and it will inform how best, or the best course of action you take, especially in your different communities. So as we are going through this presentation, please, I want you to think of your community, your state, or your region, or your country. Now, climate change affects different countries in different ways. It affects, even in a country, it affects different communities in different ways. So as we are talking about all these things, just have a picture of your community or your country in mind, and be thinking of how you can localize all of this knowledge to solving climate crisis or to leading climate action in your local communities. So before we continue, let me ask, how has climate change been affecting your community? Let me see some responses. Now, I don't want a textbook definition that climate change leads to coastal flooding, climate change leads to flooding, climate change leads to drought, and all that. I want you to be particular about how it affects your own community. So I'm seeing flooding, I'm seeing heat. Okay. Flooding again. Heat, extreme heat. Is it just flooding and heat that are the impacts of climate change? My rice farm got flooded. Oh, so sorry about that. Flooding, erosion, deforestation. Does climate change cause deforestation? Somebody posted deforestation. So does climate change cause deforestation? Awesome. Displacement, erosion, change in rainfall pattern. Yes, that's again, don't give me textbook impacts. Food prices are high in Kenya. Awesome, awesome. So these are extended impacts of climate change. Impact on indigenous snails. They can't seem to survive. Interesting. Extinction of some crop. Heat stress, decreased agricultural production, sickness, poverty as rainfall patterns have changed, leading us to embrace renewable energy development. That's an opportunity in this whole climate crisis. Skin infection, droughts. Okay, awesome, awesome. Now I feel like farming, yeah. So an angry ocean, interesting. Now I'm getting what I need. Okay, great. So let's just move on then. Now, this is a module on climate change impacts and vulnerability. Now, these are some of the ways that climate change impacts us as humans. The first here is agriculture, then we have water resources, we have our health. So many of the things that we talked about fall under this. Food shortages, affecting farming and agriculture, and water resources, change in rainfall pattern, and all of these things. And if you look at agriculture, water resources, and health, these are like 3 key things that are important for our survival as humans. If there's no proper agriculture, if agriculture is negatively impacted, then it affects our food. And as humans, if we don't have access to food, we die simply. Water resources, as humans, if we don't have access to enough to water in good quantity and quality, it also eventually leads to death. And then our health too. Changes in temperature and rainfall patterns are leading to an increase in the incidence of vector-borne diseases, and examples here, and a whole respiratory illnesses, dehydration, and lots. So if climate change has this extended impact on our being, on our well-being as humans, then it means it affects the core of our existence as humans. And we need to take a holistic approach to address the impacts of climate change in Africa. And this requires adaptation and mitigation strategies. So when you are taking climate action, when we are taking actions to address climate change, there are 2 major pathways, and they are the adaptation and mitigation strategies. So adaptation refers to the measures or the strategies that will take to cope with the existing impacts of climate change. Say your community has been flooded, for example, how can we adapt to the flood rather than people just having to leave their homes or being locked up in their homes, being stuck in their houses? What can we do such that we can still come close to having our normal lives, even with the climate change impacts? While mitigation talks about efforts or strategies that we can put in place to reduce the causes of climate change, which is primarily greenhouse gas emissions. So what can we do to limit or reduce these emissions that lead or that contribute to global warming and climate change? So adaptation on one hand, mitigation on one hand. So there are some solutions that would pass as both adaptation and mitigation, while there are some that are just adaptation and some are just mitigation. So moving on. So this is the concept of vulnerability. So we are all vulnerable to climate change. I think everybody around the planet is vulnerable to climate change. It's just that the scale of vulnerability is different for different people, for different countries, for different communities in the same country, for different, towns and cities. We have different scales of vulnerability, and it is generally regarded that Africa and some parts of Asia and maybe South America are the most vulnerable parts of the world to climate change. And this is because of the level of poverty, the inavailability of infrastructure and systems that help us, inavailability of adaptation strategies and mitigation measures that will help us, cope with the climate crisis. So vulnerability has 3 dimensions. Vulnerability is a function of exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity. So exposure is the degree to which we are exposed to the impacts of climate change. How exposed are you to flooding, for example? If you live in a very upland area, in an area with high elevation, you are less exposed than a community that lives in an area with just 10 meters elevation. If you are living in an area with 1,000 meters elevation, and another community is living in an area with 10 meters elevation, some are even in places where their elevation is below sea level. So the level of exposure is different, and the sensitivity here refers to the degree in which a system or community is likely to be impacted by climate change. And then there's also the adaptive capacity. So the adaptive capacity now is, so exposure and sensitivity are the factors that predispose you to the climate crisis or the impacts of climate change, while the adaptive capacity is a function or is the capacity or the ability to manage those the impacts that you're exposed to. So all of this work together to form the vulnerability, to define the vulnerability of a region, of a community, of a state, of a continent to the climate crisis. So there are many scientific formulas where you can incorporate this exposure, sensitivity, and adaptability to calculate the vulnerability of a community. So let me ask a question. How, on a scale of 1 to 10, how vulnerable do you think your local community is to climate change on a scale of 1 to 10? Remember the exposure. Okay, let's pick flooding. Let's pick flooding, only flooding, one of the impacts of climate change. So how vulnerable do you think your community is to flooding? Wow, I'm seeing very high figures on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, I'm seeing 2, 7, 8. Okay, so let's pick desertification. How vulnerable do you think your community is to desertification? Still on a scale of 1 to 10. Desertification. I'm seeing a 0. Interesting. Okay, let's pick another one. What other impacts of climate change can we pick? Let's see. How vulnerable do you think your community is to say decrease in food production as a result of climate change? Or how vulnerable do you think your community is to decreased agricultural produce because of erratic rainfall patterns, excessive heat, and all of that? Okay, interesting. Good to see that we are following the conversation. Thank you for your responses. So we just move on. So when you want to lead climate action, these are concepts that you would need to understand that will help you to design the appropriate action for the community you want to lead that action in. Remember that this is conversation about climate science to action. So you need to understand all of these concepts so that they would help to, when you understand how exposed you are, how sensitive, and the adaptive measures in place to help you to design the appropriate solutions that would become the actions you are going to take. So let's move on. Here we have, just an example of projects and that, sorry, I'm having to move parts of my screen. Impacts of climate change on populations in Africa. So this is how it affects some water resource in some parts of Africa. And also this is how climate change has led to health issues. Now, these are just some examples. Again, you would know that this affects your country in a different way or in different severities and all of those. So let's move on. Then here we are back to talking about adaptation. So if you want to take now in the scope of all we have been talking about, if you want to take action for your community on climate change, what action would you take? Like if for example, your community is predisposed to flooding, what action can you take about flooding? Now, everybody, let's talk about flooding. What action would you take to combat flooding as an impact of climate change in your community? Waiting for responses. What action would you take to want to combat flooding? Creating more water channels. Interesting. That's one. Planting more trees. Great. Restoration of wetlands, advocacy, drainage patterns, early warning. Awesome. Construction of drainage channels. I prefer to clear drainages, creating good drainages. Actions. Somebody's asking something. Okay, great. So now all these actions that you have mentioned, and we talked about adaptation and mitigation earlier. Adaptation is a reactive measure, while mitigation is a proactive measure, a preventive measure. So these solutions, this action that you have mentioned, which will it fall under? Is it adaptation or mitigation? Adaptation or mitigation, your actions that you want to take. Okay, let's do it like this so that we put things in perspective. You would have to type again, just type your action and put in front whether it's going to be mitigation or adaptation or both. So if you write providing the more drainage channels, then you put in front adaptation or mitigation. Let's see. Planting more trees is both. Okay, correct. Waiting for more responses. Proper disposal of waste, adaptation, restoration of wetlands, adaptation and mitigation. Okay, recycling of organic waste, mitigation. Okay. Not building in water waste, mitigation. Interesting. Planting fruit trees, adaptation. Okay. Bonding, bonding. What's bonding? Abdulaziz, what's bonding? Mitigation, proper waste disposal, growing of cover crops, both reduce overgrazing, community sensitization, mitigation. Community sensitization can be mitigation and adaptation depending on what exactly you're doing. Clearing drainage channels can be mitigation and adaptation to construction of drainage. Adaptation can also pass as mitigation. Effective drainage system, both. Okay, great. We are getting the hang of it. So that's okay. Mulching. That's interesting. Thank you guys for your responses. So for adaptation, there are different categories of adaptation. We have ecosystem-based adaptation. This is about nature for nations, nature solutions. So natural solutions that can help to adapt to climate change. Like when you mentioned tree planting, for example, yeah, those will have natural effects that would pass as an ecosystem-based adaptation. Then infrastructure-based adaptation. Many of us mentioned having drainage systems, building more drainage systems, or making sure that the drainage systems are clean or clear. So that is that would be infrastructure-based adaptation. And community-based adaptation, empowering local communities to develop their own strategies. Many of us talked about advocacy, sensitization, and early warning systems. So some of those will fall under community-based adaptation because it involves you interacting and carrying the whole community along in the process of designing solutions or adaptation or mitigation strategies. And I, for one, think that community-based adaptation is the most important, and it can house the infrastructure-based adaptation and ecosystem-based adaptation. Imagine you as an actor, you go to a community to prevent flooding, blah, blah, blah. We are going to plant trees, and if you plant the trees and nobody caters for the tree because you are not resident in that community, and you go and the trees just die off, or they just get lost. But if the community is carried along, they will be able to manage that tree because they would own it. They would understand that we are doing this to prevent this, and it becomes something that they own and that they would manage even when you are not there. Same for infrastructure. So I feel that all of these other adaptation strategies should fall under the community-based adaptation model because it would bring in that sense of ownership that would make all the people in the community be jointly responsible for managing those adaptation projects you are going to put in place. And these are examples of climate change adaptation projects in Africa. Let's move on. Now, link between climate change and sustainable development. Really, there's no sustainable development without tackling the climate crisis, because climate change affects everything that makes sustainable development what it is. So sustainable development started as a concept in the 1960s, 1970s, and the whole conversation about it, sustainable development is development that can help us meet our needs now without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I'm sure many of us are familiar with that definition. And the whole conversation about sustainable development started from people thinking about how we as humans can manage the resources that we're having access to, that how we were using the planet so that we would meet our needs without compromising the ability of our children coming after us to meet their own needs. So really, if the conversation for sustainable development started with an environmental orientation, and this whole climate change thing is an environmental crisis, it means really that there's not going to be any kind of development. No development can be sustainable if we don't tackle this climate crisis, because climate change affects everything. It affects all. If you know about the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 of them, climate change affects each and every one of them, and if we don't address it, it would hamper our efforts in actualization of those goals. So if you're on the call and you are thinking that how does climate change affect this particular goal, you can drop a message. Just mention the name of the goal, or the number or the name of the goal, and we can talk briefly about how climate change impacts that. So if you need some examples, so these are just examples of efforts that are, inculcating climate change and sustainable development in a single approach. Okay, let me see. Goal 12. What is goal 12? Goal 12 is responsible consumption and production, right? Yeah, I think I'm right. So goal 12 should be, responsible consumption and production. So the whole climate change crisis, remember we said that sustainable development is about meeting our needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That's what made us start talking about sustainability and sustainable development. And responsible consumption and production seems like a perfect goal to stand beside the definition of sustainable development. So it's because we have been irresponsible in our consumption and production patterns that we are actually in this climate crisis. It's in the course of production that we emit a lot of greenhouse gases that cause global warming, that causes climate change. So if we are able to have to actually have more responsible consumption and production patterns, then we will not have issues about managing resources. We will not have issues about not being able to cater for our planet. So Joshua, okay, I think, did I answer your question? Let me see another one. Let me see if I'll see another. Okay, you've posted a lot. We can't do all of them. Well, let's see. SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Okay, I'll just take that. So in all of this conversation we are having about climate change and sustainable development, we need strong institutions really that will be able to, enforce all the needs, all the change that needs to be made. And, we have a lot of UN agencies. For example, UN is like a national organization, an international organization that helps different countries to come together to chart courses or to chart a course for development in different parts of the world or for the globe in general. So we need this kind of institutions in place to help us to really have the necessary conversations that will help us to advance development efforts while not disregarding the environment. And I said it in the first presentation too, that for example, the way climate change affects different parts of the world is different. The way climate change affects North America is different from how it affects Africa. So if we have the UN that is doing work to help to create systems and measures to manage this crisis on a global scale, we also need institutions in Africa that would help us to talk about the climate change issues in the light of how it is affecting us in Africa, so that we are not just following whatever is said in the global meetings. Because for example, the whole target of the Paris Agreement is not to go beyond 1.5 degree or 2 degrees Celsius, depending on above pre-industrial level. So and there are arguments now that if the whole world becomes 1.5 degree or 2 degrees warmer, that Africa as a continent would get about 2.5 or 3 degrees warmer, while the rest of the world may be for Africa is going to be 2.5 or 3 degrees. So we see that the way it affects other parts is different from how it affects Africa. And remember, I said earlier that think about all of this in line with your community, in line with your country, how you can localize all of this knowledge for your country. So you need institutions that would help to drive these conversations in respect to your community, in respect to your country. I hope I answered your question. We have read so much on that. So all this you can read up later. Somebody said, I think I saw poverty somewhere, climate change. When you're affected by flooding, when you're affected by desertification, somebody wrote earlier that they lost their rice farm because of flooding. Flooding is an impact of climate change. An extended impact of that is somebody losing their farm. Their farm is their source of livelihood. If they are not able to get the produce from their farm, they lose a whole lot of money that is supposed to come from that, and that is poverty. So if you really sit to think about it, climate change affects all of those goals, and those goals also affect climate change. Zero hunger. So the people, thank God we just gave an example of rice. If all our farms, if farms are affected and there's decrease in agricultural produce, it reduces the quantity and quality of food that gets out. And if food does not get to people, hunger is increased. So that these links are even more direct than some other ones. So if agriculture is affected by climate change, then definitely hunger would be a thing. So let's just move on. There's need, we mentioned strong institutions a few minutes back. So we need to solve the climate crisis. We really need governments to be very much involved, and governments have to recognize the input of stakeholders involving civil societies, private sectors, and international partners. And beyond all of this, government also needs to recognize the place of individuals, the roles individuals can play in helping to solve the climate crisis, whether by carrying out research, whether by leading action. And so this is just talking about how we need to have a wholesome approach to solving the climate crisis. Now, this mentions government, but this is speaking to how government is to recognize the place of other actors in solving the climate crisis. And sometimes for government to come to this knowledge, for government to really recognize all of these people, there's need for people like us who are actors, who are leaders, that would push and push and push for government to recognize all the work that needs to be done in the climate change space or in the environmental space, and to recognize the role of these different other categories of actors so that we can unanimously and jointly strengthen action to solve the climate crisis. So again, you can read through all of this. And I should say at this point that when you are working to any work you are doing to solve climate crisis or to lead climate action in your community, please, it is very important that you try as much as possible to carry the government along. Sometimes all you need to do is, when you complete a project, just go and submit your project impact reports or your project outcomes or outputs in your government, in your responsible government environmental or climate change office. That's all. Just try as much as possible to connect with them, let them know that you exist and that you are taking action. So many times what we do is we want to fight the government, or we are talking about how government is not doing enough to lead climate action or to help to solve the climate crisis. But again, these governments are trying to provide other infrastructure that would help to boost the economy, and some of them cannot even act as much as we expect because they don't know, because they are not knowledgeable. You'd be surprised that if there are 100 government officials, maybe only 5 of them would have really heard about climate change and would be able to talk about what it means, because they are concerned primarily with providing other forms of infrastructure that will help to boost economy and that will help to make life easier for people. And many of them forget that there's need for environmental infrastructure that, even if it is not so tangible in the immediate, eventually helps to make the quality and length of life better for people. So carry the government along. Don't always see the government as an opposing agent to solving the climate crisis. While government has its own initiatives also to solve the climate crisis, you should try as much as possible to work with them and involve them in the solutions that you are creating. Okay, so moving on from that, climate finance. So if you want to take climate action, how can you get climate finance? How can you get funds for your action, for the action you want to take? I'm sure that you take further modules that will speak more to this. So these are just some examples of some sources of funding for climate action. Public climate finance, private, and public can be from governments and multilateral organizations, that can support any category of project you're doing. So your country's government of other countries, the UN, and there's private climate finance, can be from banks, can be from other organizations, institutions, businesses, and Yeah, so these are things you can just read up on. And then there's the important one. There's also something called carbon markets now. Well, myself, I am not a huge fan of carbon markets, but it is something that actually is a source of climate finance, because it's a system where people that are emitting carbon or that are emitting greenhouse gases pay for the gases they are emitting, and people that are so that other persons in other parts of the world or close to them or wherever can take action with the money they pay to help to sequestrate the carbon, or to take off the carbon that they release into the environment. Now, there are many conversations around this. Some persons support carbon marketing and some persons do not support it, but ultimately from both angles, everybody is working together to see, everybody's thinking from different perspectives to try to design the best way to solve the climate crisis. And okay, then there are climate adaptation funds, there are philanthropic funding and all that. So yeah, these are different sources of funding for projects for climate action. So when you understand the kind of action you want to take, or you have decided the kind of action you want to take, you need to go out there and see the kind of funding that will be suitable for the project you want to carry out, and to see the potential sources of funding from it. Somebody says I should shed some light on the transition to a low carbon climate resilient economy. Transition to a low carbon climate resilient economy. Transition to a low carbon economy. I'm just going to take away the climate resilient economy. Yeah, so the whole conversation about low carbon climate resilient economy is to try to, now the whole what we do as humans mostly is we are interacting in different ways economically. Now we have an environment, we extract resources from the environment. The resources we extract, we use them to create goods and services, or provide services, or create goods that will enable us to provide services. And in that process, we are interacting, whether locally or internationally. We are creating an economy where we are exchanging products, exchanging services, and it is all of this process of production of goods and services that we exchange that we release the gases, the greenhouse gases that negatively affects the environment, causes global warming, and leads to the climate crisis. So this whole conversation is about, okay, how can we continue to have an economy? How can we continue to interact? How can we continue to live our lives? How can we continue to produce goods? How can we continue to render services in an economy, or how can we continue to create this economy without emitting so much greenhouse gases that causes the climate crisis? So how can we reduce, if we have been emitting 100 tons of carbon before in the process, say for an industry, if our production process has been that we have been emitting 100 tons of carbon, what can we do? What measures can we put in place? What can we create? What can we refine? What can we review? How can we, improve our processes such that we can reduce our emission of 100 tons of carbon to say 10 tons of carbon? Maybe 10 tons, maybe too ambitious for a beginning, for starting. How can we reduce to 50 tons of carbon? And also, these 50 tons of carbon that we are going to be emitting, are there things that we can do that can help to also take away these 50 tons of carbon away from the environment? So the whole conversation is a very wide one, and it depends on how you are looking at it. But the ultimate aim of this whole low carbon climate resilient economy is, how can we continue to do business? How can we continue to be humans? How can we continue to buy and sell goods and services, and doing so in a less harmful way to the environment? And if we are still going to continue to do things as we have been doing them, and we still continue to release emissions as we have been doing them, what measures can we put in place to remove those emissions? So I hope that answers your question. Egun, sorry if I pronounce that correctly. Okay, so when you are reading about these concepts in books, on the internet, it can seem bogus really, but I like to bring it to the basics. And when you try to understand it in the basic way possible, then it helps you to put things in better perspective and understand how different people are approaching the subject matter. Okay, let's just move on because of time. Now, this is climate change communication. And I think that this is very important, or one of the most important things in solving the climate crisis. So remember I said that you should tell all of this conversation to your community, how your community is affected by climate change or by the climate crisis. So the way a community that is being affected by flooding should learn about climate crisis should be different from the way a community that is being affected by desertification should learn about climate crisis, because it's still the same climate change, but it affects them differently. It is causing flooding in one part, it is causing desertification in one part. So you have to have very effective communication strategies when you are taking climate action. So your message must always be tailored to the audience you are engaging part time. So you can't go to, excuse me, somebody is asking, so this means that to have a low carbon climate resilient economy, the activities we do determines the same. I'm not sure I understand that. I'm not sure I understand that determines, that's what determines. So if you can type that again. So you can't be in Nigeria, for example, and you're teaching people about climate change and you're only talking about how climate change is affecting the world, how climate change is, affecting other countries. You have to talk about how climate change is affecting Nigeria. You have to talk about how climate change is affecting Kenya, how climate change is affecting South Africa. When you are speaking to an audience of that population, or if it's Africa, you have to bring it to the continent. And even in a country, when you are speaking to people who are being affected by flooding, you can't be, dwelling on how climate change is causing desertification. No, that's not something they'll be able to relate it. You need to tailor the message to how it's affecting them locally in their respective environment. And also your audience your audience at times may be uneducated people. And when you are doing with uneducated persons, for example, you can't afford to be using all the big words we have been using in this presentation. For example, you have to come to the basics. If you can converse with them in the local dialect, you have to, if they are uneducated folks, so that they can relate with you and understand what you're talking about. Then use evidence-based information. Yeah, a credible source for climate change information is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So they periodically release updates about climate change. Okay, I mean, is it the activities that we do that leads to low carbon climate resilient economy? The activities that we do now are the ones that are causing the climate crisis. So when we are talking about a low carbon climate resilient economy, how can we do this activity in a better way that would reduce the carbon that we release into the environment or into the atmosphere? That's the whole idea about a low carbon climate resilient economy. So we want to create an economy that can withstand climate change, but for us to create an economy that can withstand the climate crisis, we also have to cut down on our carbon, because if we continue to release carbon, it will continue to amplify climate change and it will continue to hurt our economy. So if we are going to create an economy that is resilient to the climate crisis, it means we have to solve the climate crisis itself. And the way to solve the climate crisis is actually to cut down on our carbon emissions. So do you understand now? That must be your phone name. So our activities lead to climate change. So our efforts to cut down climate change so that it does not affect us so much or too much or much more than it already does is what will help us, is what should inspire us to build that low carbon economy. What is IPCC? IPCC is Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Yeah, thank you. So it's basically a research organization that helps to study previous, present, and make future projections about how climate change is affecting us. And they are the ones that have been doing so much research that have confidently put out there that it's our activities as humans that are amplifying climate change. So they have a lot of reports that they release yearly, sometimes up to 2-3 versions of of the report, versions of the report yearly. So you can just Google IPCC and see, you read more about them and see many of their reports. So when you are also talking about climate change, depending on your audience, use visual communication, encourage engagement, use storytelling, interact with people, have feedbacks, and also use social media. So here, it is important that people know that you are a climate actor. And one of the ways they would know is if you are always talking about climate change and how we can, provide solutions. So this use of social media, for example, social media allows you to reach a wide range of audience. You can reach millions of people from the comfort of your phone, from the comfort of your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, because you are talking about the climate crisis. So you are either talking about, you're either identifying climate issues, or you are talking about potential solutions or solutions that can work, or actions that people need to take to help to solve the climate crisis. So it's very important that as climate actors that we have that identity. People know us as climate actors. So some of us, I know we are not in this climate change space or environment space full time, and we want to, so maybe our social media accounts, for example, or whatever we do reflect something different. But like we have established earlier, climate change affects everything. It affects our businesses. If there's flooding, you cannot go to your school, you cannot go to your shop, you cannot go to your office and all of that if there's serious flooding. So how can you also, in the different areas you are working, how can you infuse climate change skills? How can you be more climate conscious in your operations, in school, at work, in your family? What are the things that you can do that can help to reduce the overall impact of the overall negative on the environment that leads to climate change? So in all ways possible, communicate about climate change, use all the platforms available to you. And if you are, depending on the platform you're conversing about climate change, whether it's virtual or physically, always try to engage people, to tailor your message to your audience, and reference sources that are credible. And it's always good to tell stories or to talk about climate change from the perspective of how it affects people. Remember earlier in this call, I was asking questions about how it affects your immediate community, what actions you would take if you are going to, solve flooding in your immediate community, and all of those. So moving on. Yeah, these are some things that we can read up on, case studies of some successful climate change communication strategies in Africa. Recently, I worked with a team to develop a climate change communication strategy for my country, Nigeria, and that strategy is going to be published, is going to be out there soon. So these are projects you can read on and see the communication strategies they adapt. So note that these are big projects, these are huge projects, and there are things you can definitely learn from, but depending on the scale of operation or the scale of your project, any project or action you want to lead, you can always adapt from this or build something or localize some concepts or some angles from this for your project. Then moving on quickly, importance of developing a climate action plan for Africa. So remember also that I said earlier that how climate change affects the rest of the world is different from how climate change affects Africa. So it is important that we design action plans that are specific for Africa, not just for the whole world, or not just adapting something that is being done on another continent. Their landscape is different, their people is different, their population is different. So in Africa, we have different peculiarities. So all the actions we are taking has to be with a focus to how it affects our country in Africa. Yes, we are contributing to the global conversations and global action plan design, but when that action plan is being designed globally, we also have to push in key consideration for our continent as Africa. So these are also some of the things you can read out on essays. These are also some of the things you can read up on. But again, don't let all of some of these projects are big projects. Don't let them overwhelm you. Your climate action projects does not have to be, yeah, thank you, Joshua. So your climate action project does not have to be start on a very big scale, or you are looking at doing something that would involve all the government, all the stakeholders before you take action. So you can read up on this. It will help you to put things in perspective, understand the problems better in Africa, and they can help you to design your own small action plan for your community. So even in developing a climate action plan for Africa, there's also need to develop climate action plans for individual countries in Africa. And even in Africa, there's need to develop climate action plans. Even in your country, I mean, there's need to develop climate action plans for different states, for different communities, different localities. So after going through all of this, design things that are practical and that you can localize in your respective locations. Then key components of a climate action plan, a baseline assessment, mitigation measures, adaptation measures. So in any plan, you're in any solution you are going to create or co-create with other persons here, the baseline assessment would help you to understand what the situation is. Then you look at what mitigation measures and adaptation measures can we put in place through this action plan, through this project you want to execute. And so after we have executed this project, or in the process of execution of this project, depending on how the project is, if it's a temporary project, it has different phases and time, then you are carrying out monitoring and evaluation to compare the baseline situation to what you have now based on the measures you have put in place at a particular time, maybe along the line of the project execution or after the complete or the total execution of the project. So again, don't let all these big ones, all these big words, especially for those that this whole concept is new to, don't let all these big words intimidate you, or don't think that when you are creating an action plan that you have to go and look for big words and have things to put under all of this. These are simple concepts. Try to understand how they relate to you locally. You are going to get this presentation, definitely. I'm sure they are going to get it to you. And understand what these mean and what you need to do as regarding this with respect to the community where you are going to implement your action. Still about key components of a climate action plan. Again, you read up on all this, you check this out later. And again, there are big English here. Depending on the scale of your project, don't let this intimidate you. If just any action you are taking, just understand how the action is connecting to the whole, how the action is, helping to mitigate or adapt to climate crisis in its own way. And if you cannot find ways to explain all of these big Englishes yet, don't bother about them. But if you can, yeah, it's always beautiful to have all of this represented in your climate action plan. So just allow yourself time to grow, to understand the whole space better, and to grow through getting to how you can now begin to get to levels where you can actually have tools and skills to include all of this in the processes or the plans that you are creating. Yeah, so this is about how you can measure the your project. After you have carried out your project, what are the things you can do, or when you are carrying out your project, what would be good indicators to help to measure success? So if your project is climate education, for example, for a particular population, what are the things you are going to put in place to know that people have actually gotten the education you have presented them with? So would you do a pre-project survey or a baseline survey where you get to understand, okay, how much do these people know about climate change? How much do they know about flooding and the causes of flooding? Then after you have done your education project, now you do another review again. Now that we have completed this, what do you know? What are the things you have come to the knowledge of? So these are things that you can just read up on, and your indicators, your measures for evaluating your action would be different depending on the project that you are working on. Then evaluating the effectiveness of climate action. Again, this would be particular to the project you are working on. Conduct regular evaluations, involve stakeholders. I mentioned this earlier. Work with the government, very importantly, in any way possible. even if it's as little as having somebody from the government speak on your project, even if you are not totally in agreement with how government is handling this situation. We need to start disabusing our minds that we always have to come out to oppose the government. There are many issues, and a particular government will not be able to solve all of them. So if you can ease that on them while you are demanding for more.
So I think that must be a network thing. Let's give a few seconds for facilitator to join the call again. So like I was saying, I mean, today's class has really been very extensive. Like if anyone is not on this call at the moment, you know, the person has missed out on a whole chunk of information, new information, you know, different from Monday's class, right? Okay, exactly. The class is 10/10. Yes, because I mean there is some things that were in the same, you know, slide, and it's why I keep saying if it's possible for you to attend the classes on both days. So regardless of whether you were so as I was saying, sorry, yeah, so regardless of whether you were in port 1 or port 2, it will do you a world of good to join both cohorts, you know, because you can just harness both information, you know, for the both classes, and you never know what you might miss at any particular point in time. So Michael, you want to continue?
Yes, sorry,
I imagine there was a network thing.
My system actually powered down, power issues here, so I had to join back on my mobile, so I can't present anymore. But I think I was already very close to the end of the presentation, and there's no need to go back to presenting again. So my closing remarks will just be that again, beyond all the many things we have talked about, and I don't want this to look complex to you now. This is like the textbook part of it, where we are having to write many things that you need to have this in place, you need to put that in place. What I want everybody to primarily do is look at your community, wherever you are going to take action, understand how climate change is affecting that community, understand what needs to be done, what you can do, whether it's helping to educate more people, whether it's leading a particular kind of action that can help to adapt to that climate issue or to mitigate the climate issue, and design your project along that line. So when you start working on one project, you have worked on 2 projects, you would understand all these bigger concepts better, and you'll be able to create larger projects. And when you are doing all of this work, please put the work out there. Don't do work and not talk about it. Let people know that you are leading action. Your action would be what's beyond showing. This is something to show off. It is something for the benefit of the planet. So show off your good works. Let people see them. If people say you're being proud, yes, you are being proud because you are doing the planet some good. So show it out there. And it's something good to be proud about. It's not something bad. So, and your action points would also be the inspiration that some persons need to act. So whatever you are doing that you are keeping to yourself, somebody somewhere is also thinking of doing that, and they are just wondering, can I really pull this off? Or when they see that, oh, somebody somewhere did this and I've just been thinking about it, I can also implement it. I can also localize it in my community. They'll be inspired to take action. They would sometimes, some people don't even have an understanding. They are thinking of what to do. How can I do this? What do I need to do in my community to lead climate action? And when they read about your works, they see that, oh, this is similar to the problem my community is experiencing. So I have read about this now. Now this is something I can also go and localize in my community. So whatever action you are leading about climate change, about solving the climate crisis, about helping people to come to the understanding. Put it out there. And again, I'm sure there are sessions that will talk about opportunities in this whole climate crisis space, how you can benefit from that. So look out. This putting your work out there would also help you to gain access to opportunities. And I'm going to close with two things. One is be involved in this climate action thing so much that when your family and friends are asked that, do you know anybody working in environment or climate space, you would be one of the first persons they would recommend. You have to, and the way for them to actually recommend is if they know, when they see that this person is always talking about climate change, how to solve climate change, how climate change is causing problem here and there, and we need to take action and all that. So put yourself out there so much, and then create an identity in this space and let people know you for that. Then the final thing is, please don't underestimate the place of climate education, especially by talking about the climate crisis. Talking is always the starting point for action. Some persons will tell you that we have been talking since all these days, so, and nothing is happening. Keep talking, keep talking, keep talking. Talking about it is the learning point for some other persons. And if we don't continue to talk about it, whether through word of mouth, whether through social media posts, in your religious centers, in your schools, in your workplace, if you don't continue to talk about, people will not know. If you don't teach them, people will not know. There's something we say in Nigeria: if you don't give us, how can we take it, or how will we take it? You have to give the education so that people will come to the knowledge of it. You're talking about it may be what a particular government official who has never really understood the concept of climate change would see and will learn and would be conscious about. And when they get to office, when people push the climate change agenda to them, they would be able to relate better and would want to act in that line. So you're talking about it is what would educate your friends, your family, your younger ones, your older ones. You keep them educated. And even if these people, for example, don't have political ambitions, maybe eventually some of them will get to the government spaces, and because they will get to key decision-making places, and because they have heard something about climate change from you, they are able to incorporate it into development plans for your community, for your country, for your state, for your country, for the continent. So please continue to talk about it in every way possible and through all platforms possible. Talk about the climate issues, the climate problems, talk about the solutions, talk about the actions you are taking. This is an education point for a lot of persons, and that is actually what they need, again, to be inspired to take action and to understand the whole concept better. When more people are educated, we have more people willing to take action. We are able to harmonize actions. We are able to synergize. We are able to, have a lot of persons, stronger voices, stronger hands demanding for better leadership in the whole. Oh, they just restored the lights. Better leadership in the whole climate change agenda. So again, don't underestimate the place of talking about these things and putting your works out there. Thank you. And I think we'll just questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I see a question here. Something about eating meat. So Elena Chanders is asking, how does eating meat contribute to climate change? Does it mean we have to be vegetarians?
Okay. So this is a dicey question. Remember, and there are some topics in this climate change space that brings a lot of arguments, crazy arguments. For example, as an African, here as myself, I don't really eat so much meat. Meat is an important source of protein for nutrition and development. The guys that eat most of the meat are the guys in the Western world. So the how meat consumption contributes to climate change is because what they eat mostly is beef and a whole lot of meat products from ruminant animals. And these ruminant animals, especially cows, for example, release methane in their when they are belching and in their poo. So, and methane is a primary greenhouse gas too, though it's more potent than carbon, though it's not as the quantity is not as much as carbon and So it contributes to climate change. It's a major source of greenhouse emissions. So that's why we talk about the emissions from meat consumption. So will I tell you to stop consuming meat? I will not tell you that really, because our meat consumption in Africa, note in Africa, is very low as compared to the Western world. But as much as possible, now that you have the understanding that meat consumption, meat rearing, all of those contribute to climate change, because there's methane production that is a greenhouse gas that is very potent and all that. If you can reduce your meat consumption, fine, reduce it. So sometimes when we are talking about this climate change thing, there are some, we are not talking about, sometimes we are not talking about a radical thing. I can't tell you to stop eating meat. What if meat is the only source of protein you consume? And that's what helps you to balance your diet. I can't tell you to just eat rice and you develop kwashiorkor or something. So if you can reduce your consumption, reduce it. That's progress. Reduce your intake of meat. And okay, somebody says eat insects and the West. Okay, no, let's not even get into that conversation about the West versus Africa. So if you want to go vegan, go. But some persons will still tell you that even vegetarians, that for us to have more plants for you to eat, we have to deforest more regions, and so that we can cultivate more crops that you eat as a vegetarian and all that. So the conversation is really, really, really wide and can cause a lot of arguments. But again, like I've been saying, understand these things. And I'm happy that somebody asked about how meat consumption contributes to climate change. So now that I have an understanding, if you can reduce your meat consumption, that means there will be a reduction in the markets for meat production. So now you may think your action is not significant, but imagine that the 177 of us presently on this call are residing in a particular community, and the 177 of us reduce our meat consumption. Say normally we eat meat 5 times a week, and we reduce it to twice or thrice a week because we have come to this knowledge. That would be a significant reduction in the meat production markets, and that would also reduce the emissions associated with meat consumption and production. So that's how these things work. You may not necessarily try to go 100% and just go radical because of one knowledge you have come to. Understand how your little efforts can contribute, and how your reduction is a progress in the right direction. I hope I answered your question.
Okay. So let me see if there are other questions. So I can't see any question in the Q&A again. I think most of the questions have been answered in the presence of you answering the last question. So a quick one on the eating of meats. Just like Mayor Kun said, doesn't have to be a grand thing. If you can do it, it counts for a lot. We are over 500 also participants on the call, and if each and every one of us adapts a lifestyle that seeks or that is in line with curbing or reducing the global warming and allowing so much reduction of the greenhouse gases, then it counts for something. I usually say it, I can't remember, it's been years since I later, and for different reasons, because it started from, okay, can I just then challenge myself? I buy something, maybe a sachet of biscuit or something, and I try as much as possible before I drop it on the floor, right? I look at everywhere, I look at it, no, this is not right. For me, I've now seen littering as very, very sacrilegious. So I've attached, I've kind of attached a religious angle to it. So I think if we on our own, tell ourselves or convince ourselves that, okay, I believe in this action, so let me do it. Your action will, and you have to believe it. Your action will now become contagious. That the next guy, the next, lady, the next family member sees you and feels that this is something I need to emulate. Right? At this point, I want to sincerely appreciate our facilitator.
Sorry, before you
He's done.
appreciate me, can I answer a question I saw in the chat room?
Okay.
So somebody asked on the back of the response I gave about the meat thing. So somebody asked, so how do you deal with the displaced economics that happens? How do you do just transition in such instances? So thank you very much for that important questions. These are the critical conversations that we need to have in line or with aim of solving this whole climate crisis. So remember I said that the transition is not just going to be radical. If you tell 100 people to stop eating meat that previously consumed meat, 100 persons will not change that first time. Perhaps the first time you tell them, maybe nobody would really even listen to you. Then you come the second time and you tell them again, and you tell them why. Maybe 5 persons will now listen to you. And so for the person selling the meat, for example, would understand that, oh, I've lost 5 customers. These 5 people no longer come to buy meat. Eventually, you continue your advocacy and all that. We are just using this as a scenario. And let's say we get up to 40 people that stop eating meat and they switch to other sources of protein. Now, the person that used to sell to 100 persons now has noticed that my customer has reduced from 100 to 60. Now I have just 60 customers. The other 40 persons, what are they consuming? What are they now consuming as their source of protein? And can I go into producing that? So if we are going to solve the climate crisis, now most of it many of it is rallied around consumption and production patterns. So we have to come to the place where the market, we the populace, we control what is produced or the kind of things that are produced. We want to control that. We want to control what is being produced and the manner in which it is being produced. We, the markets, can determine the kind of products we want to go for, either because they are sustainably produced or because they are not sustainably produced. So when producers understand that there's a new demand, there's a new market emerging for this kind of product, that economics responds to the economy responds to where the demands are. So when they understand that is where the new demand is, the market will shift to producing more sustainable protein sources. So that's why we need to continue to educate more people to come to that understanding where they can be part of that force, that market force that can help to determine the kind of production, the production pattern, or the kind of things that are being produced and that will be consumed. So the economy will adjust to where the demands are coming from. And again, it's never going to be a radical transition. It's going to be a gradual one, and it will give the producers or the sellers or the marketers enough room to understand the new dynamics and how they can also shift their production and marketing patterns to meet the demands of those new dynamics that have come from people that are demanding for more sustainable production or more sustainable processes of marketing or more sustainable items to consume. So I hope I answered your question. Who has that question? Sorry, I can't locate it anymore.
Yeah, that was
Messi, Amina. Messi, Amina.
Yeah.
Messi.
Okay, so in order not to take so much of our time, so I think one of the first thing we need to do is to give a big round of applause to Mayokon. Is done exceedingly well. Please, let's keep jamming those hands. Let's keep jamming those hands. If you are not in today's class, I mean, let's keep jamming it. Thank you so much, Mayokon. I mean, many of the things he explained today is not in the training's resources. So you have to be here in the live session to be able to gain these lessons. So thank you so much. We are rounding up. It says Bamdeli is trying to say something.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I hope we are doing very great today. Special thanks to Mayokun for doing excellently well in educating and interacting with us today. We understand your busy schedule, and then we say a big thank you from Hasty Health Initiative for finding time to do this here. So I quickly just want to add to all of what Mayowa had said earlier to everyone, that we need to also be proactive. We need to be active in doing this. It is a collective responsibility for everyone to actually achieve the climate change that we all want. Part of our goal and part of our responsibility during this fellowship is to, one, ensure that we create an interactive session, which this live session is part of. And we also take the conversation to both our WhatsApp and our country groups, where we have more action plans. So we are done with both the cohort 1 and the cohort 2. So the action plan from this week is to one, make sure that if you are on the call, I know Mayowa will have shared the attendance list. Make sure that you share the attendance list, you fill the attendance list, and because that is part of what the KPIs of giving the certificate. Yeah. Also, when we get to our groups, let's start thinking of ideas. Mayokon has said a lot of ideas on what we can do to achieve this part of the climate change. Yeah. So let's start thinking of the project or the activity, the action we want to take at our community level, and start discussing it amongst ourselves, which will form our group when that is finally done. And also, it is important that as Mayokun said also, that we should put ourselves out there. Now you are a zero carbon fellow. Go to your Twitter handle, go to your Instagram handle, your LinkedIn page, and share all of this learning. Start educating people with the little knowledge that you've gained. Put hashtag zero carbon so they know that you are learning, you are in a learning phase, and this is one big thing that you are doing for your community, because individual actions actually generate and add to the global action that everyone is trying to achieve. Yeah. So get to your space where you have audiences, in your schools, in your community, on your social media handle. Let everyone know about that. We are trying to achieve a zero carbon Africa, where we have net zero emission, net zero carbon in Africa. So, and also let's try, when we're doing all of these communications, let's try and put hashtag zero carbon Africa, so people can know that there is a platform that young people are now learning, because what we want to achieve with this fellowship is to have created a pool of your network of young people that are championing the cause of climate action. And Mayokun said that when we put ourselves out there, when people are thinking, oh, I need a group of people, I need some people, I need persons, oh, there is a fellowship that specifically targets young people to train them on climate action. So I want to say thank you to everyone that has found time to join. It's actually a big rescheduling on our side, and then we want to say thank you for finding time to join us today out of the short notice of this change in schedule. And we hope to see you next week. Please, let's ensure that we join next week, and come early on time so we can start the class on time and then end on time. And then from here, thank you and bye.
Bye, guys. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mario Kun. Do have a blessed day. Do have a wonderful day. To everyone, please do not forget, make sure you fill in the attendance form. And also, for those that are just knowing for the first time, there's a knowledge assessment quiz that was dropped earlier. I think we'll have to share that again. So we are just trying to assess the level of knowledge you have after attending this lecture or the class. It carries the title From Climate Science to Action. So attempt the test. I think there are about 15 or so questions there. Just go on, attempt them, try it out. If you attempt them, it will refine your understanding of the concepts, that has been discussed. Thank you very much. The class for next week again is something on, yes, okay. So it's something on global energy. We expect a full class, a full audience. For your questions and other concerns and all of that, you can just send us a DM on Telegram, on WhatsApp. We'll look for a way to resolve them. Thank you very much. You have a pleasant day. Stay blessed. Bye. 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 Bye, Irene. Bye,
See you all next
Steven.
week. See you all next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye, Praise. Yeah, and thank you so much, Adenike. Thank you so much, Noso. Thank you so much, Bamidele and Anne for the support. Sandra, bye. Lemore, bye. Samuel, Naya, bye. Enubuzo, bye. Aya Netino, bye. Achibong, bye. Precious, take care of yourselves. Mohammed, bye. Pauline, yes, we would share the slides and the recording. We will share the slides and the recording. Okay, let me see if I can just put this on the yeah. No, I've not. I just want some people to just. Yes, we will still share the recording. Okay? Trust me. Okay, we share the recording. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Miriam. Yeah. Yes, Abdullah. Materials will be shared. Materials will be shared. Oh, you are appeared. I didn't care. Yeah, you're muted.
Yeah. Sorry, what did you say?
I said you are appeared. It was an empty screen.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I had to quickly attend to something else.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So,
Where is my-
okay, so yeah, Chin also is also there. So to everyone else, we're ending the call now. Take care of yourselves. Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Do have a nice day,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.